Welcome to Film Studies Minor. I'm your host, Zach Eagles, and I'm joined by my co-host, Colby Graham. Colby, say hello.
Hi, everyone.
And Jackson Miller. Say hello, Jackson.
Hello, Jackson.
So today's episode, we're talking about a really fun little action flick, Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. So what was your guys' first experience with Mad Max, Colby? When did you first see this movie?
I saw it maybe a month after it came out. I was not exposed to the Mad Max movies before. This was the first one I saw. I remember it being like The Road Warrior was a big deal and how George Miller shot it and everything. But I remember when Fury Road came out, everyone talked about it, and they were all like crazy about it and the effects and everything. And then I saw it, and then of course it like blew my mind.
Did you see it in the theater?
No, I rented it. So yeah,
that's how I did it too.
Yeah.
After it first came out on Redbox.
I regret it. Like I wish I was like IMAX,
the death of theater.
But yeah.
And Jackson, when did you see this movie for the first time?
I saw the original Mad Max a while ago, a couple years ago.
When did you see this movie for the first time?
And then I saw the sequel to that one. I think like that same trip that I was on. I was like, yeah, these are good. And then for about 4 years ago, the trailers and everything for this movie started popping up. I was like, wow, this movie looks like everything like I'd like. It just looks like stuff moving really, really fast and not a lot of story that I have to worry about. And it's going to be great. And then I didn't see it for about 4 years. And so I saw it as of when you're going to be hearing this.
Why don't you do it in relation to when we're recording this?
Oh, what time is it? About 12 hours ago or something like that? 14 hours ago, maybe?
So what was your initial reaction?
I really liked it. And it was exactly what I thought it would be, and it was exactly why I wanted to see it back then, and then for whatever reason never did. And I was like, oh, I should have seen that instead of some of the other crappy movies that I've seen.
So, I mean, obviously this film, won a ton of awards when it came out, Academy Awards, and including, it was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. And then it won 6 actual awards. It won Best Film Editing, Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing. So the thing that I was really drawn to in this film is the sound design. So I have a lot of notes on that. And I just think, let's start there. Let's talk about the sound design. What was kind of some of your takeaways from it? What did you think they were doing with the sound design, and why did you think they did the things that they did with it?
I mean, the biggest thing is, at first, is the soundtrack. Because the music and the rhythm really propels you from the beginning all the way through the end and through everything. But then as I watched this again at a closer viewing, you notice a lot more things I'd never noticed before. A lot of effects, and we could talk about it later. But but I think just the music alone, from both just the music and the soundtrack, the rhythm, the beating, the drums, all that stuff. It just you feel like you're on that chase. So.
Yeah, the entire time it has a bigger variety of sound than you would kind of expect. But obviously the most memorable part is the dude with the guitar strapped to the trucker or whatever that gets everyone going all the time.
Let's start there. So in sound design, in sound and film, there's basically, you can break it down into 2 things. It's either diegetic or non-diegetic. So diegetic is, it actually lives in the world of the movie. Non-diegetic is like a voiceover. Like it's outside the world of the movie, but the audience can hear it, right? Or like a typical film score was non-diegetic. But in this film, that guitarist dude is all diegetic. So everybody is hearing it. And the reason that's important is because in this film, I think what's cool is the whole reason for him. So it's basically a chase. This whole film is like one chase. And he is the one who is setting the location of where the followers are, basically. So, if you hear him super far in the distance, you hear that guitar. There's that moment where they're broken down. Remember that part?
Yes.
And they hear them in the distance. Yeah. And all they hear is the guitar. But that is George Miller's way and the sound designer's way of kind of setting where everybody is. So it's a cool little way to do it, showing how far away they are or how close they start to get, and then to the point where through that little canyon area where they're chasing, and it's just full volume guitar.
There's another scene, I don't think it's the one you're referring to, but there's kind of an overhead bird flying shot.
Yeah,
and
POV.
They're going over the different groups, and as it passes over, the guitar guy fades in and then fades out.
Yeah.
it's just a cool technique, because it just helps set location. And that's like one thing that sound can do that's pretty cool on film is set where people are and where things are. A lot of times that's like with voice, So let's talk about voice a little bit. So I think it's interesting how it starts. The film starts with this whole voiceover by Max, right?
It was hard to know who was more crazy.
And I haven't seen the other films, so I don't know if this is in relation to those at all. I have no idea.
I don't think so.
Everything I've read, people argue about if it's a sequel to like Road Warrior because you had like Mad Max. There was like what Mad Max,
Thunderdome, Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah, and then Road Warrior and then Thunderdome. People try and forget about Thunderdome. Yeah, but like people argue like if it's a sequel to that or if it's like in the middle of those. But I don't think George Miller was ever going to say.
Right.
But yeah, but like the voiceover, like there are nuggets from those movies in this movie. Like I never until researching this like. The little music box that one of the wives plays with is from Road Warrior.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Huh.
And then, but all those flashbacks that he sees, like obviously something.
It's like something. We
Yeah,
just
his
don't
daughter
know
and
about.
But
Well, that's really cool. Then I think that it didn't even apply to anything else that anybody knows about. You know, that was cool. But I think starting with the voiceover was interesting because, so with voice, there's this technique where like a mute character. If it's a character who doesn't talk much, even which Max is like that, they become almost more powerful, because they're not constantly. It's like if you think about, I'm trying to think of a good example from a film, but like a villain sometimes, like if they don't talk and they're just kind of this brooding thing, they almost are more powerful because then their voice kind of makes them human in a way.
It's like Darth Vader is a great example.
Yeah.
He barely talks at all.
Right.
He just kind of stands around and is foreboding.
Yeah, and the other thing with Vader too is like, and
there's a lot of Vader in this movie.
there's
A
a
bit
lot of
too
Star
much.
Wars in this movie.
There's a little too much direct Vader in this
Yeah.
movie that was odd.
But see, that's the interesting thing, and I'm gonna screw this up 1,000 times, but Immortan Joe, did I do it right?
Yeah, you did it right.
Joe.
Immortan Joe.
So with him, he also has this mask on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't see his mouth saying these things. So it's like this disconnect between seeing it and hearing it, and that's also what makes him powerful. That's what makes Vader powerful,
It's the Bane as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you think about like in a stupid movie like I Know What You Did Last Summer or something, or Scream, I guess is the better example. Like somebody who's like calling like I'm going to kill you or whatever, and you're not seeing that person say it, it's scarier, right? Because they're not even human at that point. They're just like this entity, basically. So with this, what's interesting is Max doesn't really talk at all, but we start with the voiceover. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing to do, and they also don't really bring that back at all. They just bring in those little snippets of the girl like saying things to him. But I think what George Miller was trying to do right away is like establish like this guy is quiet but he knows sort of what he's doing in a way,
I mean, it's rapid, like establishes exactly who his character's motivation is, and
Right.
then it's kind of doesn't change a ton throughout the movie.
Right.
It's basically he states his mission statement is like just to survive is the entire goal.
Right.
Yeah.
To survive and run, and again, that's essentially what the movie becomes.
Right.
Pretty obviously.
I like how the movie just like it just starts.
Right.
You don't like. I feel like another movie. You would have like what happened in the last world, and then and it has like one news clip of the trees, and that's it.
Right.
And you get that's all you need to know. And then the voiceover, that's all you need, and then it jumps right into they're chasing him, the car flips, and then you go right to the Citadel. But yeah,
It's interesting because again, you don't really get they communicate really quickly, and I guess probably anyone seeing this kind of has had an idea of what like the Road Warrior is, at least is like a post-apocalyptic concept, but they don't really make Max look good at first. It's like he's like you see him and he's got a great shot and he's standing there looking all cool.
Right.
Runs up, eats that lizard.
Steps on the lizard.
Yeah, and it's like, oh man, like this is the badass Road Warrior. And then he drives away and he gets blown up and caught in like 10 seconds after he
right.
starts driving. So it's like, oh, this is the badass Road Warrior. And then eventually he starts, there's like the scenes where he's beating off like 10 guys and stuff and trying to escape.
Excuse me.
I stand by my statement.
I missed that scene.
And he gets captured and everything. But now I can't stop. Oh God.
Also, the noise of the lizard. That's another thing with this film that's like crazy is the like punctuation of sound in moments. I mean, it's nonstop. It's like literally nonstop. Like everything makes so much noise, and the film. I just can't imagine this film without it. You know, like that's
Without
what,
any sound, yeah, that'd be really
yeah,
weird.
that'd be like a silent film.
Like, man, this is boring.
But like, but no, I think it's just cool that like each little thing, like if they're moving like a necklace or something, it's like making all this like crazy sound.
Everything's really punchy.
Right.
It's like it's kind of accentuated by like they're in just this big empty desert most of the time.
Right.
It kind of changes it a little bit, but like it's so otherwise quiet. Like there's not birds or anything.
Right.
So every sound effect is amplified.
Yeah.
And I think like on that note, like one of the biggest like motifs, I guess, of the entire film is obviously like the engine, right? The sound of the engine. So like at the beginning when the title of the film comes in, I guess like a couple minutes later, and when that comes in, it's like to the rev of an engine. And I think like throughout the whole thing, like what is the rig called? War rig?
The war rig.
Like that whole thing has so many like engine sounds too. And the other thing that they do that's pretty cool is every time like Immortan Joe, not every time, but
watching Joe.
Thank you. We just have a soundboard here that would like click that. But I think like every time like he has like a big moment where he says something or like it cuts back to him, like you also hear that engine rev, like when you see him and it doesn't even make sense, but it's just like
That's his sting.
right.
Like,
But it's like perfect because that's like the whole thing. Like it's kind of showing like this whole like army that's following them is like him. It's essentially like boils down to him.
well, yeah, I
following
mean,
him.
yeah, it ties into how the movie kind of ends or the entire. I guess I won't get into it in case we're doing
No, we can
spoiler
do-
free.
I
I
think
can't
we
imagine.
can
I think we can.
Okay,
yeah.
right. It's once he's defeated, like everyone immediately is like, okay, you're the new king. Defeated
Right.
the old king.
Let's talk about Furiosa a little bit. What did you guys think of her character, and what did you think they did with sound design around her? Do you have like any moments you can remember?
I love Furiosa. I think that it's more her film than Max's film.
Yeah.
The whole, her story of, and then you get into she was taken, as implied, by Joe and her mother, and then her mother died, and then she's trying to go back to the green place, I think she calls it. But in all her, and I researched Mark Mangini, who's the sound editor. Like each one has obviously their own score. Like Max has a theme,
Right.
Furiosa has a theme. But I think she's just a badass.
And she has that line later when, they're talking about the wives, and Max says, she says they're looking for hope, and Max says, "What about you?" And she just says redemption. And I think like that is sort of her theme through the whole movie
Yeah.
in a way, and so she is like the badass of the of all of them. Like even bigger than Max, I think. And it's just a cool way that they did that. Like the fact that she's a woman protecting these other women is a really interesting thing, obviously. But it's kind of also like they don't even need Max. Like Max is just sort of there.
Yeah,
Max is useful.
I like
but
that
not.
he's just like along for the ride, pretty
Right,
much. And then he
exactly.
tries to leave,
Yeah.
and it's not even like a Hollywood type. Like he leaves, and then like he has a thought, and he comes back for the girls. He legit's trying to leave, and then he can't because of the switch.
Right.
And he needs her.
Right.
So I like that he's just kind of there, and then he has to eventually just deal with it and help
Right.
them. But
Yeah, it's called. I mean, this isn't a new statement, but it's called My Max, but it's really barely about Max. He's
Right.
such an empty character where it's just a trope. He's like, oh, he's the guy. If this were a movie made, or just a movie made by someone else in a different style, it'd be like the only female characters would be like, oh, it's he had a wife and she died, and so she's like a vehicle for motivation. But that's kind of the extent of like the female character.
Right.
So I'm sure that this movie deserves a lot of credit for like. Yeah, it's about Mad Max, and if you remember the old Mad Max movies, it's just dudes killing dudes and women being like the victims of it.
Yeah.
And this one's like really, Furiosa's the main character, and you have a nice gamut of female characters where it's not just Furiosa that's like the super warrior. Then you
Right.
have just the wives that are more kind of the traditional characters in this movie. But then she runs into the pack of I don't remember what their name, but their group was called, but like the warrior women that end up helping them.
Right. But even the wives, I think, are really cool because they each sort of have their own personality that you kind of see develop through the film, and they're not like this like helpless like group of like four women. They become like amazing, like each of them have like a really big moment also, and it's just I don't know. I thought that was just a really cool development because he like the way that he establishes them. We see them in the desert and they're beautiful and they're just like kind of standing around, and then when Max comes. And he's like trying to take the truck, and him and Furiosa are fighting and everything. Like all of them immediately start jumping in, like doing little things to kind of stop him in a way. And they've all had this. Obviously, they've lived this life like under this like terrible husband or whatever he is to them, and it's just like now this is their moment to also like live and break free. So it's just really cool. So their thing is also like redemption in a way. I think that is sort of the theme of the whole thing, really. Even at the very end when Max says, he keeps like not telling her his name, and then finally he's like, Max, my name is Max. Like that's like his moment to be like, I'm a human being.
Yeah, he's not just
right.
Yeah. Part of the talking about they kind of take the wives' characters on a journey is I remember when Max just like takes the truck at the beginning and he like shoots a couple shots at one of the wives and like I guess it like clips her leg or something.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of like with a moment of I think she walks up to Furiosa and I believe the line is something like she says it hurts and Furiosa says everything hurts out here.
Yeah.
Pick what up you can and run.
Yeah.
It's basically like that's them transforming to okay now like welcome to the real world.
Yeah. I like, back to your point, Jackson, I think if anyone else made this movie, Max and Furiosa's relationship would be very different. Like, I feel like
that it would have
if
been
Furiosa
like
would have been like,
love or something.
Yes, I feel like Furiosa would have been like, oh, that's his wife. She reminds him of his wife. Like, now they're in love. It turns into a love story, and it's definitely not that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, they're just equals.
Yeah.
And then the wife that gets shot in the leg, I don't remember anybody's names in this movie, but
They all have
I think
great
it's
names.
splendid. Yeah.
how could I forget these names? They're so specific.
Like Boondagisk and stuff like that.
But she's the one who is like his favorite wife, right? Well, she's the pregnant one. Yeah.
The pregnant one.
And she's the one who falls out and gets like ran over, which is like crazy.
I know.
A lot of them get ran over, but she's like, I guess the one.
That
That's
one's...
the point.
And but I love that. That was a really cool sound moment too, because all the wives are like freaking out, everybody's like going crazy, and then it's kind of like from Max's point of view, and it's all like sounds like super distant. Do you remember this part? And he's like sitting up. He's like sitting up there.
Are you talking about the cut? Because even that, like, I still like have to like.
Which part is that?
That part, like they're in the canyon.
Yeah.
Like the motorcycle chase and all that stuff, and then Joe's
And he's
chasing
like
them in the big truck,
yeah, and
the
he's
monster
holding
truck.
her, and then they lose her. Or
Wait, what are you? Oh! You're
talking about
talking
when she
about
gets ran
after she
over.
gets run over. He's holding her.
Yeah.
And the brother is like shooting the gun.
Right.
Oh, I'm talking about before that when she falls out of the truck.
That's what I'm talking about too.
What?
I just remember getting ran over.
I'm talking about.
dang.
So she gets ran over.
Yeah.
And when it cuts back to the truck, they're all like freaking out because now she's
Yeah.
like,
Did you see it? Did you
dead.
see it?
Right.
Yeah.
But in that whole moment, everything they're saying is like sounds like super distant and like almost like underwater or something. And we're focusing on Max.
Whatever happens, we're going to the green place. The green place. We don't even know where to find it.
And it's like his point of view. Like
It's like the shell shock kind of
That's like
effect.
exactly.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Saving Private Ryan thing.
Yeah.
It's like we're with Max on this journey, but like it's just a weird thing because like we don't really care about him. Like he's not who we're focused on Furiosa.
Yeah,
and
like
she's like the person that the audience wants to connect to. So I just think it's interesting the way they kind of like tie us back to him with like little moments like that.
Yeah, the interesting point about him not really being the focus. I remember the scene where he like goes off into the darkness to kill a bunch of dudes, and then he comes back like covered in blood, and he's like, "It's not my blood," and all that.
Yeah.
Like we don't even see like.
Right.
If the movie were all about Max, it would be we would get to see him doing his like most badass stunt and stuff like that. And
There
so
is that
it's-
really cool moment though. It's after like that storm that they go through, and he like wakes up in the sand.
Yeah.
And then, like, you can literally hear, like, the grains of sand,
Yeah.
like, falling off
Yeah.
of him. It's another way I think they're trying to, like, draw us into him in a way. But conversely, later when Furiosa has that big moment in the sand where she, like, falls down and is, like, screaming, instead of, like, focusing on the sounds of the sand and her crying and all that stuff, like, it's that big, like, music sound. And I think that's like the way to like really bring the audience like under
it's this
her,
is the
you
big
know?
emotional moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting that it's with her and not Max, like that shows what they're trying to do with her character. Plus she's just amazing in it, like acting in it. So I think that's another reason we're like tied to her, where Max is more like he's Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
I feel like Tom Hardy is the same. I don't know. I like him, but I just feel like he's like
he's hardly a character.
and he's
yeah.
just like Bane, like he's just like there, like,
says a couple words.
right? It's like, okay, dude, like have a little charisma. Just
Yeah.
a
I
little
mean,
bit.
Furiosa even gets the big like kill the villain move, like heroic
Yeah.
moment at the end,
Right.
Which is also a great sound when she pulls his face gets
Yeah.
pulled off.
So I found some quotes from Mark Mangini, who we kind of mentioned, who's the sound designer, and I think this is really interesting. So I'll just read this little quote. He said, I had this notion that the truck itself was an allegory for Moby Dick. If you think about this a little bit, we saw Immortan Joe, the leader of the war party, as Ahab. He's hell-bent on killing the great white whale, the war rig. And he said, we wanted to personify this as a giant, growling, breathing, roaring beast. It had to be grounded in reality, but we wanted it to be more than that. So we designed whale sounds to play underneath all of the truck sounds, to embody the real sounds and to personify it. So they literally have actual whale sounds that play in those moments. And like he even talks about like how they are literally like shooting harpoons at it, like as a whale.
Yeah,
you know, like,
that's a good.
They actually I don't know. I think it's just interesting the way that he approached that because the war rig is like this gigantic beast, you know, and that's another reason Furiosa seems so powerful is because she seems to be the only one who can control it, right?
And she's the one that's assigned even before she betrays
Right.
That's
Immortan
his
Joe.
imperator.
It's
Yeah.
hers, yeah. So I don't know. I just thought that was a really cool way to incorporate something kind of outside. It's the same kind of way they do the engine revs when we see Immortan Joe because it's a sound that doesn't make sense for like he's not making an engine sound. But it's just interesting the way that they tie those together because it's just cool how sound can have such an impact on character, you know? So for him, it's the engine and the rev of the engine. And with the rig itself, it's this whole whale thing, you know? And it's like this beast, but it's also the victim. Like it gets the crap kicked
feel
out
bad
of it,
for
you
it
know?
when it's getting
right.
harpooned.
And it's just like getting destroyed. And then the moment like where they are able to kind of like, you know, when it does actually get destroyed and everything, it is like kind of a sad moment because it's like, what are they going to do now? And they're leaving it, right?
Yeah.
And then they're climbing onto the other thing. And then Nicholas Hoult, is that his name? That's his name, right? The actor?
He's driving
Nuts.
the rig at the end.
Yeah.
Nux,
Or
yeah.
Rux,
Do you call him Nuts?
Nux. I thought it was Rux. I don't remember what it was.
But that was a
Yeah.
really cool moment too because he also has this crazy journey, you know, and let's talk about him for a little bit. So that's kind of the end of his journey, and he's like, remember me.
He has
and-
redemption.
Right, and exactly. So
He had them witness.
Yeah.
right, so he also just falls off and dies, but that's the moment he's the one who, you know, kind of like sails the whale into the
boy.
sea.
Starting
Yeah.
to.
Well,
That's what you do when you have a
sail
whale.
into the sea.
A beach whale, you push it back on there and you pick someone and they have to sail the whale to the sea. And I also heard
That's how you beat a lisp, right? You just say
Yeah.
sail the whale into the sea.
and I also read that the first gang that starts attacking him when they
Yeah.
first go off, the little like spiky ones. I remember reading somewhere that he said that he put hedgehog noises mixed in with their engine noises down.
Oh,
down
really?
low.
Oh, I
the
never
whole
thought-
time.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's usually every time it crashes up against it, you hear a little like really
wow.
low. It's hard to pick out, but it's pretty cool.
So I guess the point of that would be they're just like little annoying pests.
yeah,
in
the
a
little
way.
hedgehogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I didn't know that.
That's why they're
Interesting.
spiky.
My dude loves animals.
Well, back to the ending.
I read when it shows that Max every time it's a squirrel. It's just
know.
a squirrel like chewing on a nut.
That's why you notice he's always chewing on like his fingers and stuff.
Yeah.
'Cause he's like,
because he's a squirrel.
it's really strange.
It's really interesting how they did that. And then one of the wives was a flamingo. It makes absolutely no sense.
Is that the one that
but-
got plucked out by the little guys that popped in
Oh,
and
like
grabbed her? and-
feathers gets plucked?
Yeah, like a flamingo, you know, because the thing about flamingos is they're such. You look at them from a distance and they're so beautiful.
I'm so glad you took that class like about flamingos.
Yeah, I
and-
know. It was a pretty easy one. It was just 3 hours one day a week, but it wasn't. that
Wow.
bad. I know. It was
One
About
day a week?
flamingos.
just one day a week. Yeah. So you look at a flamingo and it's so beautiful, but it's also so fragile.
Right.
Because they're just you walk up to it like a 2x4, probably not even that big. You just swing it and you connect on its plant leg, like the one that keeps it in the water. That
Do you
bird is
really need a
toast.
2x4? I feel like you
Yeah,
it's
I
like-
mean,
yeah,
I feel
every-
like you need to have a stick.
You could just kick it, really, like, if you hit it at, like where the knee bends. So anyway, so that's why. But they can also fly. So that's why the guy comes in and he like plucks her, you know, like how you pluck a flamingo.
Yeah. As we've all done.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So let's talk about nuts. What was his name?
That's the squirrel. The Tom
Okay,
Hardy.
back to what you were saying, Zach, about the ending
Yeah.
with the war rig. I also read the same thing in Mark Mangini where he said when it ends and it blows up and they crash it, you hear all the whale sounds. You hear like the whale making that like
Oh, right.
echoing. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I never really thought about that.
What was
until-
that?
That's how whales talk.
We have a clip.
Jeez.
It's just Jackson making the sound.
Oh, it's just the scene from
Yeah.
Finding Nemo.
Yeah, like that was the thing that he also continued at that moment. He said, this is the death of the great white whale. So like they're really trying to sell that. So I don't know. I thought that was cool how he did that.
I'm all about whales, man.
I mean, they took. Mark said they took, instead of 6 weeks to make the mix, they spent 6 months just for the sound of the movie, and I think it shows.
And
honestly.
I think it's pretty impressive the films that it was up against that year for best. So as we said, it won best sound editing and best sound mixing, and it was up against The Martian, The Revenant, Sicario, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens. So it's a pretty good mixture of stuff. Yeah. What did you guys think of the music in the film? The way that we talked a little bit about the guitarist, but what did you think about the fact that there's not a ton of actual score in it, like music score?
That's a shared trait with a lot of the movies that I end up really liking. It's just keeping it fairly sparse. And so when there is sound or when there is, and there's a lot of sound in this movie,
right.
like we discussed that earlier, but everything kind of means more. Everything's extra punchy and everything like that.
I think that it's interesting, those moments of actual score are moments where they are trying to hit on that theme of redemption. As we talked about with Furiosa, like in the sand, that's like her moment of like defeat, right? And then after that, it's just like, she's like, I'm going to end all of them. So it's just like, it's this awesome moment, and same thing sort of at the beginning. And with Max, kind of starts his journey. But I think it's really cool, all the music that's actually diegetic in the film. Like we talked about the guitars, but like the drums, like it's a war.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a war, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
The war drums.
So
I love the drums.
It's cool how that is what signifies these battles, essentially. There's actually a lot of moments like that if you think about it as like a war film. Like we talked about the Saving Private Ryan kind of thing, but even like starting as a voiceover in a way, and then having these little moments of like flashbacks to the little girl jumping in his way and like.
And it has a lot of moments that you kind of see in a war movie or a war film where it kind of has the big battles that happen, and it's all like, to reduce it, it's all just it's just a chase, but it's really more staged as like different set piece battles.
Right.
So we have a lot more kind of like downtime of like them at the camp, like, oh, we got a little show, Immortan Joe's like group people at a camp. I remember the scene with the guy with the really fat feet and everything. It's kind of like they're set up and
staged. That dude was hot.
Yeah.
He was.
What is that thing on his nose? Can somebody explain that to me?
He was rubbing his nipples in the scene that I was talking about. I rewatched some more this morning because I was like, I want to hit some good scenes. And this is
that's
one of the
what
ones.
you chose? You're like scrubbing through, and where was
I
that?
kind of missed it
nipples?
yesterday. But it was, I guess this is really sound related, but just kind of the creature design, I guess, is how I'd say it. It's very like, a Star Wars-y or anything like that sort of thing. It's like these are theoretically people, but so many of them are just like, so kind of deformed in various ways to like kind of look much more monstrous. And I thought it was really well done.
I like how the music just also kind of blends in too. Like the drums, you start hearing the drums, and then you cut to it, and it's seamless.
Right. So
it's like you heard that the whole time. The guitar, you start hearing the guitar, and then it cuts to, I think it's called the Doof Warrior, where he's like hanging up in the fire and all that, and it's just seamless. And I never even thought, I was reading some of Mark Ingeni's blog where when Max comes up, or he starts hearing Furiosa beat the drum on the war rig after the storm.
Oh yeah.
So she beats it like a few times, a few beats, and then the score takes over that rhythm. And I never even noticed
really?
that.
Oh,
she
that's cool.
beats it, and then it transitions, and the score starts with that same rhythm.
Oh wow.
That's a blend of the diegetic stuff you're talking about, where it starts off as actual, and then it doesn't.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, there's a phrase for that, and I'm trying to remember what it is, but it's like if a song is in a film and you're like the characters are hearing it. Like a lot of times you like see somebody driving and it's on the radio and they have the music up, and then it kind of like crosses this threshold, and then it's like cuts outside the car and you're still hearing this like big
from the same perspective,
right? And you're hearing this big song now, but now you can tell it's like not playing from the sound of the car. Right. It's like overarching the actual soundtrack of the film, and it's just a cool way to kind of bring the audience from like you're with this character, but also like, hey, audience, you're kind of like God, like you oversee everything.
Oh gosh.
Or is the director God, or are we all God?
God is in all.
Or is God God? But yeah, I think that this has a lot of cool connections to a war film in the same sort of way that like Star Wars does. For instance, like Star Wars is a war film, obviously, but there's moments where like the stormtroopers, like their whole march is just like a war march essentially, and this has a lot of those moments with the music that helps signify like we're going to battle here, you know. And it's this huge chase, and it's like an action film, obviously, but it also and it seems like messy, like things are exploding and everything, but it also is like really kind of this like straight thing, you know. It's just one thing chasing another thing.
Right.
I love those shots when it cuts to Immortan Joe driving, and it's just like it looks like they just put like a fan in front of him, and it's just blowing his hair, but like it's really fast,
beautiful.
and and it's
flowing
the
long
Maybe
locks.
it's Maybelline, you know.
yeah, and it just like cuts to him, and the music just revs up, and it's just like kind of jarring.
That moment where his like face is like ripped in half.
Yeah,
Oh,
Did you say beautiful?
it's a beautiful moment. It's such a great
So hot.
such a great death.
Yeah, I thought that was. It's another moment of like that heightened sound of how like it's just so like right there in the soundtrack, and it's disturbing and disgusting, but it's also like awesome. And the only time we ever like really see his face is like when half of it is like destroyed, and he's already dead. You know, so it shows that that's the moment he becomes human. It's very similar to Vader when taking off his helmet, and he's just like this like weak like older man. You know, and it's like, oh, this is all that was beneath this whole time, you know, and it shows like how much the voice is what carries the weight of like power.
I mean, they show. I think if I'm remembering right, that Nux is still alive at that point. He's like in the car,
Yeah.
and so he's like his whole like world is shattered. Like Immortan Joe,
Right.
It can be killed. He's not immortal.
Right. And then let's talk about, so we were going to talk about his journey a little bit, but let's talk about his journey. So at the beginning, he's kind of one of the same as all the, what are they called? The
War Boys.
War Boys.
Although
He's
he's a weaker version of it.
Right.
Like, you know, he has to.
he has
fight
the
his
blood
own-
bag,
Right.
which is Max.
Right, and that's the thing with him. That's how he gets connected, is because he has the car. He has Max's car, right? And he's the one who has to have Max with him, essentially.
He needs the blood. Yeah.
So at the beginning, he's this very weak character, and he's just trying to. I mean, all of them are like brainwashed, obviously, into
Yeah.
thinking like this is their purpose.
Their entire purpose is to die in a glorious way.
And so it's cool that by the end, he has a huge moment of redemption too, because he does die in a glorious way, but he's the one who like ends all of them. You know, he stops all of them by just turning the war rig over and just stopping everybody from chasing them anymore. So that was just a really powerful moment too, because it shows like now he's like the rest of them have been giving up their lives, but for nothing, essentially.
Right.
But he is actually giving up his life for something. So it's this really powerful moment, right?
Yeah, their entire like motivation for existence is, you know, to serve Morton Joe in some way and get to die gloriously. Like there's the scene where I believe it's when they're first like set off driving, and Nux and his buddy, or his whatever, they're friends, I guess, as far as you can tell. Joe like looks either at him or in his direction, and that's what Nux is like. You looked at me. Yeah. And so that's like all they live for.
Right.
And his buddy, who'd be jealous, is saying, no, he was scanning the horizon and all
Right.
that stuff. The scene does include, I think it may be a little bit later, an odd moment I thought where it's one of Max's, like, it's probably like his third line of the movie or whatever by that point. And he's, first you took my blood and now you're taking my car.
Yeah.
It's
On
like,
the front of the car.
It's like a cheesy little action line. It's
Right.
kind of,
Yeah.
it doesn't really necessarily, I think, fit with like the rest of the movie. It's kind of like, okay, that's like a one-liner type thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember also the scene where it's the first time we see, I guess, the whatever that spray,
Yeah,
drug
I don't know what that is, but
hypo,
the
whatever thing they do.
paint
the metal stuff.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Whenever they huff their
Right.
paint, and it's the guy gets shot and he's like wavering and about to die, and you get to see his entire existence is like that. I get to go out in a blaze of glory.
Right.
And again, like you were saying, countless war boys, war pigs, whatever they were, like die like in this relatively
song.
completely like futile like existence for not really accomplishing anything.
Right.
And then again, he's the one when he seemingly at that point has kind of figured out like, oh, Joe's not like, he's not everything. So it's, maybe we shouldn't just all be dying for him. He's the one that, again, dies for a theoretically better cause.
Out of like everybody in the film, he pretty much has the most of like an actual like a typical hero's journey, right? Because he goes from like nothing and like sinks lower than nothing at that moment when Joe like hands him the gun and he's like, kill them or whatever he says.
I love that.
And
Mediocre. He says mediocre.
And then
Joe.
and then he just like loses it immediately.
Yeah, it's like a great, like, it starts out like he gets the gun, they help him aboard, and then his chain gets caught on the war rig, and then they just like, okay, I'm done with him, and then he's like mediocre, and then that's it.
But then in the end, we see him
Yeah.
become Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue with this.
Yeah, when Luke Skywalker blows himself up to take down the Death Star.
What did you guys think of Morton Joe?
Oh, yeah. Are we cool with that being like just a ripoff of Darth Vader? Like albino Darth Vader? Like literally?
We're pretty tight with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Like it's such a, like, don't get me wrong, like he's a cool looking
I
villain
think you
and
need to
he's
look at this
effective,
whole
but-
film as like a, what is the word? Homage to Star Wars in a
more
way.
creative ideas. Don't get me wrong, I love this movie, but I mean, come on. Like the first time we even see him is like he's getting his little back sprayed for his, I guess because he's rotting or something, and he's
Right.
got some horrible condition going on. Down to like his voice even has the effect. Like it works,
Yeah.
but he's just Darth Vader without the redemptive arc.
It is cool. The thing I do like about him though, because at first, like when he is getting sprayed and putting all the stuff in it, like you kind of assume that he's just gonna like be the one directing everything from like far away or whatever. I like that he does almost become like powerful when he's like marching through and everything, and then he's there that whole time, like right there with the whole rig and everything.
Yeah, they do. He does seem really like kind of weak at the beginning because he's like getting helped up, and like when he's walking out to talk to his little just poor I guess citizens of whatever his group is. Like he's being like held stable and stuff.
Right.
And then he gets up there and he projects like he's able to stand and look as powerful as he is and everything like that.
Right.
So he kind of has the like secretly fragile, but then he kind of seems fine later on in the movie. So I'm not totally clear if he's like actually physically weak at any point, but.
Yeah, I don't really know what they're even doing at the beginning, like what they're spraying, like what they're putting on him or anything.
Yeah.
But it's gross.
Also, those people, like, did any of them get any water? Like, are they really going to catch any of the
they're-
water?
Oh,
Like,
that part.
like, what's the purpose of that? Like, he's,
People in the front, I guess. got
I
the
guess,
water.
but like, it splatters into the.
But doesn't that what he said? He says
kinda like the
he
point,
says
I guess.
something about
Don't
like
become addicted to
right.
it.
Don't be
Yeah.
don't rely on it essentially. But the guy loves mother's milk.
Yeah. Oh man.
What about that scene when it like you see all the those
Hooked up to the
women?
machines. Yeah. There's a lot of good like body horror in this movie. They do really gross stuff really well.
They do action really well
Yeah, it's a good action movie. That should win an award. Is there
for
actually
action.
Yeah, best action.
Not even
No,
best
it didn't
action
win
film.
for best
just
action. No, best action. Like the punches or something. Like if we did one really special punch that
Yeah.
looks really good. It's the best action movie.
So the consensus is we like this movie a lot.
Well, would you rent, buy, or skip?
Oh,
Buy, for sure.
Would
Yeah,
you?
I have it.
so you did.
I did buy it.
Yeah, I watched this on HBO Go.
Oh, is it on there?
Wait, no, I didn't. I'm a pathological liar. No, I rented it from the library.
What?
Yeah.
Not even like there's still libraries around these days.
Wow. Man,
Hot takes.
you're the problem with society.
Oh yeah. I'd say buy it. I mean, I was kidding.
I think
imagine
I think I would buy it.
Any
too.
movie that we're going to discuss is, I assume, for the most part,
Worthy.
Unless it's like
Maybe
one of those,
not, unless
unless it's
we
one of
just
those
want
Oscar movies that I hate and you guys seem to like, then like I'd probably say skip it. But
I was
Yeah,
telling
so-
Zach, you definitely need to buy it or just buy it or rent it and get it at McKay's, like the Blu-ray, and watch the special features, because that alone could be a movie. And there's like just how he shot everything, and just everything's practical.
Right.
Like the polecats, all the cars are real. Like they literally molded all of those trucks together and built like the Giga Horse and all that stuff. So
I mean,
it's just
obviously, we
amazing.
really focused on the sound for this episode, but I think you could do a full thing on just the cinematography. You could do a full thing on like set design and props. I mean, there's so many amazing things that they did in this.
to touch on that briefly, I thought it was shot like a Western is.
Yeah.
Which makes sense kind of given like the
Right.
setting. But I thought for the like relatively limited environments of, hey, it's all mostly a wasteland. They did a great job of just like with the use of color of like, this is the one that's blue. Like they did with the relatively limited like, I guess like, environment. They made
Right.
everything look really distinct. So there's still like a bunch of different areas that they pop into.
There's some pretty incredible moments with the color where it's like the foreground is orange and the background is like blue. Like there's a moment when they're driving in the rig, and in the back seat you see like most of the wives, and then Nux.
I thought it was Rux.
You see him in the back seat, and like they're all like completely washed in blue, and then in the front seat you see Max is like normal, like he looks like orange, like he's lit by that light. You know, it's just a cool way that I think it was that scene, and it's just a cool way that they kind of separated this. And also like just the way they're in the desert, like at night, and then like everybody's completely blue. It's really unique, and like you said, like a Western in a way.
Use the blue and orange, like this is not like a new thing. People have figured this out a while ago, but like contrasting blue with orange is like one of the most, I think there's some study or whatever,
Right.
like those are the most complementary colors,
Right.
which is why there's a great list you can look up if you're interested online. And it's like, here's every movie's like cover and how many of them are
Oh,
essentially
right.
the exact same.
Yeah.
Like Batman Begins maybe is one of those or something like that, where it's like, you know, fire and blue. Anyway,
Right.
they're very complementary colors to like contrast against each other.
Well, cool. I think this has been a lot of fun. Thank you all for listening. We'd love to hear from you and tell us what things we screwed up on, and
Oh yeah, we can do corrections if there's ever any
Yeah.
instance in corrections.
let
then.
us know. Tweet at us. Our Twitter is at Film Studies Minor.
I will say, I looked
No,
up.
sorry, it's
I'm
at FS Minor.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna interrupt. I wrote down part of the reason I looked up the wrong year for Best Picture because I was like, oh, this movie. I thought I remember it won some awards, and it came out in 2015. So I looked up the 2015 Best Picture nominees, and I was like, I didn't see it on the list. And I was like, well, gosh, I thought this movie had won it. These are terrible. Like these are really crappy movies that got nominated and won. Want to know the list that year of those movies?
Yeah.
American Sniper, Birdman, Boyhood, Grand Budapest Hotel, Imitation Game, Selma, Fear of Everything, and Whiplash. And I was like, this movie wasn't better than any of those. It wasn't better than freaking American Sniper. Like,
American Sniper was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Wow,
I
that's
had,
crazy.
I had this argument
I
with my
haven't seen
wife. I was like,
anything.
that movie's not good.
Well, Birdman is awesome.
Yeah, I like Birdman.
Whiplash is pretty
Whiplash is
amazing.
good.
Grand Budapest Hotel was disappointing.
Yeah, that was a little bit weaker, but
And then all those other ones were the kind of movies I'm not really interested in watching because they look boring.
Theory of Everything was really good.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it's great.
You hate a biopic, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try these social handles one more time.
Okay.
Facebook and Instagram is at Film Studies Minor. Twitter is at FS Minor. So tweet at us, tell us what we screwed up on, and tell us like other films that you would like to hear discussed to this great analysis that we're providing. And follow us on Instagram because we're going to try to post maybe some behind the scenes kind of photos if we can find photos that are worth sharing of.
I didn't dress for that.
You are butt naked. I really
Yeah.
wish you would have put like
It's
a
hot
robe
in
on or
here.
something.
The robe would make things way
Yeah,
worse.
we're doing this in a spa. You knew we were going to do this. I don't know why.
Well, I don't know why it's so bad that I'm naked then.
Well, I'm wearing a 3-piece suit, so I don't know which one of us is crazier. Colby, what are you wearing over there?
Just my normal clothes.
Describe it. Hold on. Tell me again.
All right, thank you all for listening. Follow our channels. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us where we're
Hold
wrong.
on. We have a list of Colby did all the work and printed off a list of actors and stuff. How is Slit like the other character that made the cut on this list? What
My
was
copy
he?
from IMDb?
Who was that?
That was
Is that like his
friend.
buddy?
That was Nicholas Stern. Yeah.
How is he like the fifth most important character?
Well, it's that probably from Billing because it's
I
the
guess
same
it's
guy.
like-
He was in. What was he in? I looked at it last night. I forgot.
I didn't remember this character like had a name.
Oh, he was in X-Men. He was like the young Stryker.
Oh.
Because he was in like
Wow, he's
X-Men
big time.
3, and then he.
Oh yeah,
What?
you know, the
Oh,
most
oh,
famous
him.
the most famous X-Men character, Stryker.
Yeah.
What is his power?
And he wasn't
You asked
actually
the question,
striker. He was
and I'm
like
just telling
child
you.
striker or something, apparently.
He's like really good at soccer.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Come back next week. Bye-bye. Make sure to come back next week and listen as we do a scene breakdown where we talk more about this concept of crossing the fantastical gap. Yes, I remembered what it's actually called. And it's this idea of going from diegetic music to non-diegetic music or vice versa. We're going to specifically look at the Rise of the Valkyries scene in Apocalypse Now, and we're going to compare that with the Reservoir Dogs scene where he cuts the dude's ear off. So try to find both of those scenes on YouTube, and then we're going to come back and talk about it a little bit. Make sure you tweet at us and follow our Instagram and let us know what you want to hear. Thanks.